Welcome to City Week, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Alton West. Today I have a guest on to talk about the upcoming annual MLK celebration, and also have a guest on that will talk about cold weather tips. So stay tuned for those interviews coming up in just a moment.
Why United Way? Because 99 cents of every dollar donated to United Way of West Georgia stays right here to help your neighbors. Yes, 99 cents. United Way makes every penny count. You can count on United Way, and United Way of West Georgia is counting on you. Please give today.
Welcome to City Week, ladies and gentlemen. Today I have a guest that's new to our community that I want to introduce to everybody as we get ready to look and celebrate the annual birthday of the Dr. Martin Luther King. I have with me guest today, Ms. Inez Patterson. Ms. Patterson, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to sit down with you, and I don't think that I've had an opportunity to meet you before this occasion, so I'd like to get to know a little bit about you and what brought you to LaGrange, Georgia, of all places.
Well, I was born here.
Okay.
Several years ago. I left during the time where I wanted to advance myself through education and employment, and I returned here after 50 years because I felt it was, my family's here, and it's a very quiet place, and it offered opportunities for older adults. And my belief in older adults and intergenerational networking has kept me here.
Oh, okay. Well, very good. I understand that you come to back to your home roots by way of New York City, and I think your background is kind of similar to some of my background. You were worked in community development in New York, correct?
Yes, I did. I worked in community development for about 42 years. I started out as a community organizer, and I moved into the actual brick and mortar of building houses and doing community planning, community development, training people in construction and new development and new houses, stores, retail setups. So we had an opportunity to work through communities and understand community life and what value communities bring, which was very exciting for me because coming from the South, you know, there were very limited opportunities. I was able to work in some of the larger organizations such as the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, the New York State Department of Housing and Community Development. So therefore was a progression of being community organizer, similar to our president, into brick and mortar.
Absolutely. And
civic organizations that promote goodwill, good talents, good education. Proud people.
And it is so important, and it's so fascinating to be able to sit down and see a city come to fruition, you know, with all the various moving parts, you know, because I guess when most people drive into a city, they don't think about the utilities, the sidewalks and all the other various infrastructure that go in and make a city. But when you get opportunity to kind of firsthand see it, talking with the developers, you know, at the conceptual stages to the finalization, it's kind of exciting, very exciting to me. And I also understand that you were a former educator as well, too.
Yes, that was one of the things that I did in order to promote myself to the next level. I taught in the city university system of New York. I taught in the local business schools where persons who had been formerly incarcerated, unemployed, seeking public assistance, we were able to turn their lives around and introduce them to programs that were melded with employment, education, as well as self-empowerment. So those were the kind, and I taught business courses.
Okay.
And also we taught work ethics. How do you get a job? How do you keep a job? What forces are there that will make a person a sustainable citizen? And that's what we did. And
it's so important to be a sustainable citizen and not necessarily have to be dependent upon various, I guess, resources or subsidies and things of that nature. It's so important. That makes a stronger community when you have, you know, people in your community working for a common good, as I feel. You know?
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Well, we're here today because this is the month of January, and we celebrate the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I know there's an annual program that's always held here in our community, and the community is always invited to that, and the community comes out to it. And I know that this year, again, it's the annual celebration of Dr. King, and it's going to be a program that's going to be held over at Warren Temple United Methodist Church. Talk a little bit about the program for us, if you don't mind.
Well, yes, I'm glad you asked. Well, the Troup County NAACP has been around for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
As I've stated before, I've been involved with the NAACP for many years. So when you come to a new city, you search out those things that you've been involved with, which you have some knowledge of and some input, and you really want to know, what does the NAACP stand for? The NAACP was started about 110 years ago, and was called the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. But it was started by several Europeans and 4 African Americans. As such, they celebrate each year the birth of Dr. Martin Luther King, because his purpose in being in the civil rights movement was to move the community along, to connect the community, to help the community overcome some of its problems, his struggles. So early on in his life, since 1944, Dr. Martin Luther King was a member of the NAACP, and he headed up the youth committee. So when he started the civil rights movement, there were mostly young people, anywhere from 12 to 14. I was in there because I was 5'8" and I could pass for 18.
Okay.
So, and they were the ones who were the backbone. They were the foot soldiers. And to connect with that, the NAACP had the National Defense Fund. So when we were marching, we knew that if we were arrested, the NAACP attorneys would be there.
Mm-hmm.
Thurgood Marshall was another one of the NAACP attorneys. So together, the civil rights, the civil engagement, protecting your rights, it's connected with what Dr. King represented. Mm-hmm. So we must know where he was, what he struggled for, because there were a lot of struggles for us to get there. There were a lot of struggles for me to move through the arenas that I did,
mm-hmm.
and as well as for you and President Obama, many other persons,
mm-hmm.
both
mm-hmm.
black and white.
Right.
So Caucasian, black, African American, Negro, we've been called a lot of things,
mm-hmm.
but we answer to very few. And what people want to understand is that Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy can only move forward if we bring it. Because if we allow our children and our grandchildren to forget the struggles and what we do and how we have survived, mm-hmm. and what they must now do to carry on, to protect our communities, to be involved, to empower the young people, to give understanding to someone who might be older than I am, who never voted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And voting rights are very important.
Absolutely.
So that is one of the reasons that we at the NAACP have always projected the connection between Dr. Martin Luther King and the NAACP.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you were talking about getting started, the NAACP getting started by young people. And I look at some of the things that our young people are being involved in today. Is it important that our young people be involved in organizations like the NAACP or just other civic organizations within their community to help it to be a better community? How do you feel? Give your opinion on that.
I think it's very important for young people to be trained at an early age and to be engaged in civic life. When I first went to school as a little kid, we had something called civics. So you knew how your city started, what ran the city. The kids now, the young people now, do not have the opportunities that should be given to them to not only play basketball, but to learn the basic rudiments of English and math. They must be able to exercise their brain as well as their bodies. So if they can do this, then they become more productive citizens and they give to the community. Now that our young people fight each other. They kill each other mm-hmm. because they've not been taught respect of self, respect of others. You cannot blame them though. We, the older generations, must reach out and touch them, bring them into organizations that help build character, help build skills, help them go further in school, and or start their own businesses.
Absolutely.
And that's the support that they're looking for from the older generation.
Absolutely. And again, you know, and I think by commemorating what Dr. King stood for and still stands for today by the soldiers that are carrying out that word and carrying out his mission, you know, the program. And speaking of that, I know that there's going to be a guest speaker there that I know some of the community may be familiar with. Tell them who will be the guest speaker there at the program, and tell them when, and again, where, I mentioned it again, but tell them when and where the program is going to be held on January the 19th, please, ma'am.
Okay, on January the 19th, 2015, we're having the NAACP commemorates the annual birthday celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King. It's going to be held at the Warren Temple United Methodist Church at 415 East Depot Street in LaGrange, Georgia. All of the community is welcome. We have lots of talent, both young people, old people, singers, dancers, ministers, poets coming out. And it's from 6 to 8. There's no fee to attend. We're just asking people to come and support your community. Bring your family, bring your young people, because there's something there that everyone can enjoy.
Absolutely. You know, again, and I know that every year this is held over at Warren Temple United Methodist Church, and the turnout, from what I understand, is always great. I think you know, in this time that we see a lot of unrest and a lot of uneasiness, in order for a community to be as strong as it needs to be, it takes everybody working together to make sure, like you stated, the younger generations, the older generations, and the mid-aged generation, all of us working together to understand that, you know, my struggle may not be your struggle, but we all have struggles. And when we can come together and kind of talk about those things, it makes us better people.
It does, and that's one of the reasons that the new administrators around the country in youth programs are targeting, you know, young people. Mm-hmm. And being as proactive as NAACP and the LaGrange community can be, we're looking out to have community conversations. Small groups at the beginning where lots of fraternal organizations, sororities, churches, ministers, youth groups, elected officials will be invited at a later date, but people need to have structure put in so that we can have discussions about what could help our community. How can we help our young people? How do we help the persons who are homeless? Homelessness is a minor problem, but a large problem, because a lot of the people who are homeless still living in with other persons. But there are about 900 to 1,000 homeless people on the streets of LaGrange. Mm-hmm. There's a high rate of unemployment. Georgia, you know, had the highest rate of unemployment in the state, in the country, United States. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And among the top for the unemployment was LaGrange, Georgia. So those are the kinds of things we want to have the community to come out and talk about in small groups. As a lot of people here in LaGrange know, we connect with each other, and the more we connect with each other, the more we're able to say, okay, our community is participating and our community is ready for the next level.
Absolutely. Well, Ms. Inez, I want to thank you. Our time has escaped us here. I want to thank you for coming on today and talking.
Well, I thank you for having us, and once again, just remember that the Troup County branch of the NAACP will be celebrating the annual birthday of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on Monday, January the 19th, 2015 at 6 p.m. at the Warren Temple United Methodist Church from 6 to 8. Oh. And again, on behalf of the NAACP and all of the lovely people of LaGrange, we thank you for having us.
Well, thank you very much for being on today. And I look forward to being out at the program as well.
Sure, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're back for more City Week in just a moment. Welcome back to City Week, ladies and gentlemen. Now I have on a guest from the LaGrange Fire Department. I have on Lieutenant Caleb Harrison. Welcome to the show, Lieutenant.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it is a pleasure to sit down with you. You know, a week or so ago we experienced some extremely cold weather.
Right.
And I know that you guys perhaps get an opportunity to go out and assist people that may have gotten stranded or in the homes that had some, mishaps. I want to talk about that in a moment, but I want to kind of talk a little bit about your role there at the fire department. I know that you're in the training division. Talk a bit about your role, if you don't mind, for us, Lieutenant.
Right now I'm the training officer for the fire department. I'm in charge of making sure everyone gets their continuing education for the year and stays up to date on their skills. I'm also in charge of EMS, so I make sure that we keep the right amount of medical equipment in stock and right medications on the trucks and try to keep up with the trends and stay ahead of the curve on that.
Okay, very good. Pretty exciting his job there, right?
It is, yes, sir.
Now let me ask you, I got to ask a question, because when growing up as a little boy, all little boys want to be a firefighter. Which one do you like better, riding on the truck or being there in the office?
I'd rather be on the truck.
You'd rather be on the truck? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to tell you, I see the trucks go down the road and I'm saying, dang, I still want to drive one of those trucks one day.
Right.
Absolutely. And we were talking, as we opened up, we talked about it, last week we had some extremely cold weather.
Right.
And we saw the temperature go from like 43 down to almost single digit temperatures there. How important is it for us as a community to make sure that we keep check on our elderly, if you don't mind?
That's very important.
Mm-hmm.
The first step in combating anything is being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that you have the right necessities at the house, you have alternate heat sources if you need them, have blankets and things like that. And if you have one that lives near you that's maybe mobility challenged or elderly, it's good to keep a check on them and make sure they have what they need to.
Okay. And, talking about in the home, and we see so many times on television where there may have been a house fire. People have a fireplace or maybe even a heater. Let's talk a little bit about fireplace safety. Now, I know that, me growing up, we had a masonry fireplace in our home, and I know a lot of the homes nowadays, they built with these, metal stovepipes, and you get that buildup. Right. Do you see that the buildup happens as frequently in those metal pipes as it does in the masonry fireplaces? Not
quite as frequently. That metal conducts heat a little bit better, and so it keeps it hot enough to burn off most of the creosote that builds up.
Okay.
The masonry does build it up a little bit more frequently.
Okay.
But it's good to keep a check on it, and when the cold weather approaches, it's good to maybe call someone to come out there and check it and clean it, just to make sure that you're on the safe side and don't have any chimney fires.
Oh, okay, very good. And of course, we see it on television, almost like seeing it on the internet, right? You see those logs that people can put in the fireplace to kind of help clean. Are they pretty effective, or do you have a opinion on that?
I've never actually used one. I know that the chemicals they use, it theoretically should break it down and help clean it out, but I don't have any experience with it and don't know if it would work. I'm sure it'd be better than nothing, though.
Oh, absolutely right. Okay. And sometimes we go into some of our homes of the elderly and they may have a space heater and they may have a strip and they have multiple plug-ins.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how they can do that in a more safe manner.
Right. This time of year we see an increased number in fires, and a lot of it is from that electrical aspect of it, taking a extension cord and plugging multiple things into it, running space heaters off of it, running televisions and everything else off the same extension cord.
Mm-hmm.
And that overloads it. If you don't want to use an extension cord as a primary cord for anything.
Okay.
If you do happen to use an extension cord for something, maybe one appliance per extension cord. Don't cover it up with a rug, because that can cause the cord to overheat as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the strip heat, that's not real good for anything. That's going to pull a lot of watts or a lot of amps. So one cord per alternative heat source. If you have to use a cord, it's better to plug it directly into the wall socket. But I know in a lot of cases you may not be able to get right there by a wall socket where you need that heat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. And when we're talking about the space heaters and stuff, spacing items away from it. What's a safe distance that people need to have in mind for keeping stuff away from the space heaters?
Right. The minimum that we ask them to keep it is 3 feet. 3 feet away. Any combustible materials 3 feet away from the heat source in all areas, and that really lessens your chance of having some kind of fire. We don't want to place them under windows where you have drapes hanging right above them, because all that heat rises, and so the conduction will make the drapes above it a lot more susceptible to catching on fire. Mm-hmm. So if we can keep a 3 foot kid-free zone and 3 foot combustible-free zone, around space heaters, that really helps our chances.
Okay, well, very good. And you know, we were talking before we came on, talking about the various, I guess, wood sources.
Right.
You know, there are certain types of woods that one, if you have a fireplace, that you know you wouldn't recommend for burning in the fireplace. Talk a little bit about that for us, Lieutenant, if you don't mind.
Right. Anything like pine trees, anything that has a lot of sap, creates a lot of that creosote. So oak, poplar, hardwoods like that are a lot better to burn, the hickories, than burning say the pines or the spruces. You know, you don't want to chop up your Christmas tree and burn it because you know it's got a lot of sap in it too. And the limbs on the Christmas trees will throw embers. That's why we urge people not to burn wrapping paper or any kind of paper in the fireplaces. Even though it's tempting to get that quick heat source, it throws those embers a lot, and we see a lot of fires caused by that.
Oh, okay, okay. And you know, I kind of chuckle when you say don't chop up your Christmas tree. I'm pretty sure you guys have seen cases of that.
Yes, sir, it happens.
Oh my goodness! And we're talking about that as well. I think sometimes maybe you all have had an occasion to go and people actually breaking up furniture. Is that
right? Sometimes when people aren't quite as prepared as they should be, and they run out of firewood or they don't have any firewood, and when this extreme cold hits, we've seen people break up furniture, kitchen tables, chairs, just anything they had lying around, and throw it to supplement the heat in their house. That's really we really want to speak against that. All the furnitures, you know, the varnishes and the stains that they use are all highly flammable, and they emit toxic gases, and anything with any type of upholstery on it, that's also that's a big no-no. Just because of the gas it emits, and it burns at a different rate, and so you really surprise yourself and have a larger fire on your hands than you expected.
Absolutely. You know, and again, we just, you know, we're talking about keeping yourself safe during this cold weather. And most of these are things that we're talking about interior to the home, you know, safe zone, things of that nature. Let's just talk about people that have to actually be out in the cold, Lieutenant, working. What's some advice that you all can give them as far as being out in the extreme cold that we saw a couple of weeks ago?
Right. If you know, if there's no way around it, if you have to get out in the cold, if your job requires you to, or there's things that you have to do, we want to make sure that you dress in layers. Try to cover up as much skin as you can. Okay. You know, the body loses heat through the skin. You know, it loses a lot through the head. If you have a toboggan or a hat or something you can wear. And with the wind, the way it's been too, the wind chill, anytime wind blows over your skin, you're going to lose more heat than if just the ambient cold was touching you. So dressing in layers, wearing gloves, you know, covering your ears, wear a scarf if you've got it. Any way that you can cover up your body surface will really reduce the amount of heat that you lose.
Okay. And you know, just common sense thing, people always tell us dress in layers, make sure you got the gloves on, like you say, and make sure you're wearing a hat, because I think with 90% of the body heat,
a lot of it is lost through the head, and people don't really realize how much it is.
That's right, absolutely. And it goes back to when our mom and dad used to tell, put a hat on. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
They knew what they were talking
about.
That's
right, that's right. Now, when we're talking also about being out in the weather, let's say, for example, someone is out, and hopefully we won't get an occasion like we did this time last year, January, we had the ice and the snow. But if someone was out and they got stranded in the vehicle, what are some things that you all could suggest to them to have in their cars to survive if they were stranded, like some of the motorists were stranded earlier? Like
we talked about, preparation is the key. You know, there's things that we can place in our vehicles for survivability, and then there's things we can place in there for comfortability. Okay. And if you can do both of them, then that's the key. You want to have extra blankets, a jacket, some means to keep warm if you do get stranded out on the road. Now, obviously, if we know weather's coming in, we want to make sure our vehicles are fueled up, they're running properly. If you have a cell phone, make sure that it's charged before you venture out. Okay. And sometimes unexpected happens, and if you do get stranded, it's good to have a couple of blankets in there, something that you can keep warm. And for comfortability, make sure you have some water. If you keep a couple bottles of water in the car, some type of snack food. You know, you won't starve to death in 12 hours, but you'd be a lot more comfortable if you had something to snack on too. Absolutely.
You know, I think back to January 2014.
Right.
You know, and we heard about the weather coming in, and I, you know, left work to get home early, and it took me an hour and a half to go 30 minutes.
Right.
Unfortunately, some of the motorists in the upper, you know, in the Atlanta area had to overnight and things of that nature.
Right.
Now, heat source inside the car. And I know some people might want to start, you know, get out, maybe bring items in. What's your opinion on that?
what we would suggest is some of the commercial items, you know, the hot hands or hot feet, the things that you can buy in the camping or hunting sections of your Walmart or local stores. Something that creates that thermal heat without having to have an open flame. You know, a lot of people, you know, can use that open flame, and it's kind of dangerous inside a confined area because of the fumes, because you know you won't want to have the windows cracked or anything like that. So anything that has an internal heat source, like the hot hands, or like, you know, they even have battery powered socks and mittens that keep your hands and feet warm. Something like that. A commercial device would probably be your best bet to stay warm and stay safe inside the vehicle.
Okay, well, very good. Now let me just ask a question too. I know a lot of times when we know that there's severe weather coming in, and the fire department and other areas may open up, if there, you know, if someone would just happen to be stranded, are the fire departments available to accommodate walk-in individuals?
Absolutely. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and what our goal is to help any way we can. If there's a stranded motorist, if there's someone who's lost their way, we'd be glad to take them in and keep them. And if we can't give them the help they need, we will help them find the help they need. We're not going to turn our backs on them. We always have an open door, and I always want to help the public any way we can.
Well, very good. You know, again, we're sitting down talking with Lieutenant Caleb Harrison here, and we're talking about keeping ourselves warm.
Right.
And definitely by covering up those extremities and doing those just common sense things. So, Lieutenant, I want to thank you very much for coming in today and just sharing this information. And by all means, we want our viewing audience to make sure that you, if someone has some questions about anything you talked about, can you give them a contact number for them?
Absolutely. They can contact me at the LaGrange Fire Department anytime at 706-883-2662.
Okay. Lieutenant, thank you very much for being on the show today and sharing the information.
Me.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're back for more City Week in just a moment.
Troup County Schools. A place where you can learn and grow.
A place where teachers care.
A place where family and school come together.
A place where learning matters.
A place preparing students for a bright future.
Whether going to college
or into the workforce.
Troup County Schools, preparing students for success today.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining for City Week this week. My guests have been Ms. Inez Patterson, and she talked about the upcoming annual King's Day celebration that will be taking place over at Warren Temple United Methodist Church on East Depot Street, January the 19th from 6 o'clock until 8 o'clock. The public is invited to come out, and the guest speaker will be the Chief of Police from Hogansville, Moses Ector. So come out and support this cause. Also, I had on from the LaGrange Fire Department, Lieutenant Caleb Harrison, who gave us some cold weather tips. And by all means, we want to make sure that we keep those in mind. And as you're traveling in throughout the day, make sure that you check on our elderlies and make sure that they're okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you've enjoyed these interviews. And as always, I want to invite you back for more of City Week. And to my listening audience, I want to wish you all a very happy New Year.
This is Bobby McCollum with the City of LaGrange Garage, and I'm here to give you another winter car care tip for your vehicle. Now, one thing you do need to check through the winter is your antifreeze. Your antifreeze keeps your vehicle from freezing during the winter. It's supposed to have a proper 50-50 mix between antifreeze and water. Very easy way to check it. One thing you need to look at is your coolant level to see how much antifreeze you have in the vehicle. Now, it's going to have a maximum or minimum level on your reservoir, and it's going to tell you how much you need to put in it. Another thing you need to check is the actual freezing point of your antifreeze. And you can do that with a simple tester you can get at any parts store. All you do is take the cap off of your radiator reservoir. On this model vehicle we have a reservoir. Stick it down in and squeeze up your antifreeze into the tester. There will be a needle showing where your antifreeze test level is, and on this vehicle it's good to -45 degrees. Now, you need to have it up to about 0 degrees. You don't want it to be any higher than 0. If it's anything above 0, you need to flush out and refill your radiator with the proper level and type of antifreeze, and you can check your owner's manual for that. This is just another simple car care tip from the City of LaGrange. These are just general care tips for your vehicle. Please refer to your owner's manual for any vehicle specifications.